once a land drenched in blood. Warlords clashed, alliances shattered, and empires crumbled. Oda Nobunaga had the vision. Toyotomi Hideyoshi had the fire. But one man, Tokugawa Ieyasu, had patience. He waited while others fought. He watched as kingdoms fell. And when the smoke cleared, he rose. Not as a warrior, but as a ruler. The man who would unite Japan under one banner and build 250 years of peace from centuries of war. This is the rise of the Shogun. Japan, once a land drenched in blood. A land divided by ambition, loyalty, and vengeance. The sound of swords clashing echoed across valleys. Villages burned, castles fell, and dreams of unity turned to ashes. For over 100 years, chaos ruled the islands of the rising sun. It was an age when honor meant death and betrayal meant survival. The era of the samurai, the Sengoku Jidai, the Warring States period. A time when every man of power dreamed of ruling Japan, but none could hold it for long. From the ruins of countless wars emerged three names that would forever shape the destiny of a nation: Oda Nobunaga, Toyotomi Hideyoshi, and Tokugawa Ieyasu. Together they would do what centuries of warlords could not. They would unite Japan. But only one of them would endure long enough to rule it. Oda Nobunaga was the fire that set Japan ablaze, a ruthless visionary who crushed the old order beneath his feet. He shattered the traditions that chained his world, and in his fury he brought a new kind of warfare. A war of guns, steel, and strategy. Nobunaga did not seek peace. He sought domination. To his enemies he was a demon. To his followers a god of war. He tore through the clans like a storm, uniting more land under one banner than any before him. But like all fires, his blaze burned too bright and too fast. Betrayed by his own general, Akechi Mitsuhide, Nobunaga met his end surrounded by flames, his dream unfinished, his empire left in ruins. Into that void stepped his loyal servant Toyotomi Hideyoshi. A man born a peasant, yet destined to become Japan's most brilliant strategist. Hideyoshi rose not through blood, but through genius. Where Nobunaga ruled by fear, Hideyoshi ruled by wit. He united the lands through diplomacy, marriage, and manipulation. For the first time in centuries, peace seemed within reach. But Hideyoshi knew peace is fragile. And his greatest challenge was not on the battlefield, but within his own court. He feared betrayal, the same fate that had destroyed his master. And so, in paranoia, he turned against his own allies. When he died, his empire began to fracture, leaving behind a child too young to rule and a nation once again on the edge of war. And in that moment of uncertainty, one man watched, waiting for the perfect time to act. Tokugawa Ieyasu. He was no firebrand like Nobunaga, no cunning diplomat like Hideyoshi. He was something far more dangerous, patient. For decades, Ieyasu had learned the art of survival. He had fought, lost, submitted, and endured. He knew when to strike and when to bow. When his rivals burned their armies for glory, he built alliances for generations. When they chased fame, he cultivated loyalty. He played the long game, watching as the others exhausted themselves in the flames of ambition. By the time Hideyoshi's son came of age, Japan was divided once again between those loyal to the Toyotomi clan and those who followed Tokugawa. The fate of the nation would be decided on one battlefield, Sekigahara. On that mist-covered morning in 1600, the armies of Japan faced each other in a clash that would end an era. Over 160,000 warriors stood ready to fight. Samurai banners waved in the wind, each one representing centuries of pride and bloodline. The air was thick with anticipation. This was not just a battle for power, it was a battle for the soul of Japan. And as steel met steel, the future of a nation was forged in blood. When the sun rose the next day, one man stood victorious, Tokugawa Ieyasu, the final unifier of Japan, the man who turned centuries of chaos into centuries of peace. But his victory was not just on the battlefield, it was in the mind. Ieyasu understood that true power is not won in a day. It is built brick by brick over time. He knew that loyalty must be earned, not demanded. That peace cannot be forced, it must be constructed. And so, he built a system that would last for over 250 years, the Tokugawa Shogunate. Under his rule, the age of war ended. The swords were sheathed, the fires of ambition cooled. Japan entered an age of peace, isolation, and stability, an age known as the Edo period. Yet behind that peace lay the lessons of blood, the wisdom of patience, and the power of restraint. Tokugawa Ieyasu did not conquer Japan with might alone. He conquered it with discipline, foresight, and control. In a world that glorified warriors who died for honor, he became the warrior who lived for order. His philosophy would echo through generations. If you know patience, you can endure anything. And so, from the ashes of endless war, a new Japan emerged, united under the rule of one man, who turned chaos into peace and ambition into empire. His story is not just one of swords and battles. It is a story of endurance, strategy, and destiny. The story of a man who waited when others rushed, who built when others destroyed, and who ruled when others fell. This is the legend of Tokugawa Ieyasu, the man who rose from the shadows of chaos to become the Shogun of Japan. The year was 1600. The mists of autumn rolled over the valley of Sekigahara. A silence hung in the air, heavy, sacred, and tense. Beneath that fog waited the destiny of Japan. Over 160,000 warriors stood ready. Samurai, archers, musketeers, lords, and retainers. Their banners painted the landscape in waves of crimson, black, and gold. On one side stood the Western Army, loyal to Toyotomi Hideyoshi's young heir. On the other, the Eastern Army, commanded by Tokugawa Ieyasu. It was not merely a battle for territory, it was a battle for history itself. For whoever triumphed here would decide the fate of a fractured nation. The dawn broke slowly. The fog began to lift, revealing the faces of thousands, men ready to die for loyalty, for honor, or for ambition. The drums thundered, the horns roared, and the valley of Sekigahara became a storm. The clash was thunderous. Muskets ignited, arrows rained, and swords flashed in the grey morning light. The air filled with war cries and smoke, a chaos so deafening it drowned out thought itself. Tokugawa's men fought with discipline and strategy. Every move was calculated, every decision deliberate. He had prepared for this day for years, studying his enemies, watching their ambitions, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. And then, as the battle raged, the tide began to turn. By survival, by betrayal. For among the Western ranks were men whose loyalty wavered, those who smiled in alliance yet plotted in silence. Ieyasu had foreseen it. He had whispered to them before the war began, offering safety, wealth, and power if they would turn at the right moment. And they did. In the midst of battle, key generals of the Western army suddenly defected. Their banners flipped, their soldiers turned, and in a single hour, confusion spread like wildfire. What was once a unified force became a fractured, dying hope. Tokugawa seized the moment. His cavalry thundered forward. His archers rained fire upon the panicked enemy. And by sunset, the valley of Sekigahara was his. Over 30,000 men lay dead, their blood soaking the soil that would soon give birth to peace. Japan's century of war had ended, not in chaos, but in the calm calculation of one man's vision. As the smoke cleared, Tokugawa Ieyasu stood atop the battlefield. Around him, silence returned, the kind of silence that only follows destruction. He had won, but he did not celebrate. For Ieyasu knew this victory was not the end. It was the beginning of something far greater. In the years that followed, he moved carefully, purging rebellion, rewarding loyalty, and restoring order. He rebuilt castles, fortified cities, and strengthened his alliances. Every decision was deliberate, every move designed to secure the future of his bloodline. By 1603, the emperor himself recognized his power, granting him the title that would echo through history, Shogun. The word carried more than authority. It carried destiny. For centuries, Japan had been ruled by the sword. Now it would be ruled by structure, law, and legacy. Ieyasu had done what no man before him had achieved. He ended the age of chaos and began the age of peace. But peace did not come without sacrifice. The Tokugawa system was built on balance between freedom and control, strength and obedience. Daimyo were ordered to submit. Samurai were bound to loyalty. Peasants, merchants, and nobles each found their place in the new order of Japan. The capital moved to Edo, modern-day Tokyo, a city that would rise from a fishing village to the beating heart of the nation. Roads were built, trade flourished, art thrived. The sword gave way to the brush, and war was replaced by discipline. Yet beneath that order, Tokugawa never forgot the lessons of war. He knew that peace is fragile and men are ambitious. So he ruled with quiet strength, enforcing unity through laws, not just loyalty. He disarmed the people but armed their minds with purpose. He isolated Japan from the outside world, sealing it from foreign influence for over 2 centuries. For 250 years, his descendants ruled unchallenged. It was an age of harmony, stability, and control, a time when the samurai's blade was sheathed and the nation flourished in isolation. But even in peace, Tokugawa's shadow remained. His philosophy, patience, restraint, discipline, became the foundation of an empire. Every shogun after him followed his path, learning from his vision, his caution, his wisdom. And though centuries later the shogunate would fall, the legacy of Tokugawa Ieyasu would endure, carved not only into Japan's history, but into its spirit. For he was not just a warrior, he was a strategist, a survivor, a builder of nations. He taught that true power does not come from the sword, but from the mind that guides it. He proved that patience can conquer ambition, that endurance can outlast fire. Tokugawa's victory at Sekigahara was more than a battle won. It was the triumph of discipline over chaos, foresight over fury, and unity over division. From that day forward, the shogun's banner flew high above Japan, a symbol not of fear, but of order. And for the first time in generations, the land of the rising sun could finally rest. His name would become legend. His dynasty would shape centuries. And his story, the story of a man who waited, planned, and prevailed, would remind the world that patience is the highest form of power. This was not the rise of a tyrant. This was the rise of a ruler who tamed an age of war and gave birth to an age of peace. This is the legacy of Tokugawa Ieyasu, the man who became shogun. The year was 1603. The drums of war had fallen silent. The flames that once consumed Japan were gone, replaced by the calm rhythm of a nation finally at peace. From his new capital at Edo, Tokugawa Ieyasu looked upon the land he had united, a nation that had once devoured itself in centuries of chaos, now breathing in the stillness of order. But Ieyasu knew peace was a delicate thing. It could not be held by the sword alone. To last, it must be woven into the very fabric of society, through structure, through discipline, through law. And so he began to shape a new Japan. The emperor remained in Kyoto, a divine figurehead, revered, but without power. The true authority rested in Edo, in the hands of the shogun and his council. Tokugawa built a system that was both rigid and genius, a web of loyalty and control that stretched across every province. Daimyo, the great lords of the land, were bound by his design. Each was allowed to rule his domain, but every move they made, every alliance they formed, was watched by the shogunate. They were required to spend every other year in Edo. Their families kept there as honored hostages, a system known as Sankin Kotai. It was brilliant. It drained the daimyo's wealth, kept them loyal, and ensured that rebellion was not just dangerous, it was impossible. Under Tokugawa's rule, Japan became a nation of order. Roads connected distant provinces. Markets flourished. Towns grew around castles, and Edo transformed into a vast, thriving city. Merchants rose in power, artists found new patrons, and culture bloomed in ways unseen since the age of the courtly Heian. The brush replaced the blade. The sword, once a symbol of chaos, became a relic of pride, worn not for war but for honor. For the first time in centuries, Japan lived without fear. But Tokugawa's peace came with a cost. To preserve stability, he closed Japan's doors to the outside world. Foreign ships were turned away. Missionaries were hunted down. The islands became a world unto themselves, isolated, pure, and unchanging. For over 200 years, no foreign army set foot on Japanese soil. The people knew little of the wars that raged beyond their shores. While Europe marched into the age of empires, Japan slept beneath a curtain of peace. Yet even in this slumber, the Tokugawa vision endured. The arts reached new heights: poetry, kabuki, calligraphy, and haiku. The philosophy of Bushido evolved from a code of death to a code of life. The people found meaning in discipline, loyalty, and simplicity. It was a quiet greatness, a nation learning not how to conquer others, but how to master itself. Generations passed, shoguns came and went, and though time softened the edge of the Tokugawa dynasty, its foundation remained strong, built upon Ieyasu's wisdom, patience, restraint, and endurance. But no peace lasts forever. In the mid-19th century, the world began to change. Steamships, cannons, and foreign ambition approached Japan's shores. In 1853, the black ships of Commodore Matthew Perry arrived, their cannons aimed at Edo Bay. The message was clear: open your gates or be forced open. The isolation that had once protected Japan now threatened to destroy it. The shogunate, unprepared for the modern world, faced a choice: adapt or collapse. The old order began to crumble. The daimyo stirred. The samurai questioned their purpose. The people whispered of change. And in the shadows of Edo, a storm was brewing. A storm that would sweep away the world Tokugawa built. In 1868 it came. The Meiji Restoration. The emperor, once a silent figure in Kyoto, returned to power as the symbol of a new Japan. The shogunate, after more than 2.5 centuries, fell. The gates of Japan opened, and the world rushed in. Steamships replaced rice ships. Muskets replaced katanas. Samurai became soldiers. Nobles became bureaucrats. And Edo became Tokyo, the heart of a modern nation. But even as the world transformed, the ghost of Tokugawa Ieyasu remained. His lessons did not die with the shogunate. They became the backbone of Japan's rise. His discipline became the foundation of education. His patience became the heart of industry. His vision of a united, stable Japan became the blueprint for the nation's future. In every factory that hummed with progress, in every school that taught the value of harmony, in every leader who placed order before chaos, the spirit of Tokugawa lived on. His legacy was not just in stone castles or written laws. It was in the character of the Japanese people, their precision, their balance, their quiet strength. Tokugawa had once said, "The strong man conquers himself, then conquers the world." And centuries later, Japan would do exactly that, rising from isolation to become one of the world's greatest powers. The age of the samurai had ended, but the soul of the shogun endured. From the smoke of Sekigahara to the neon lights of Tokyo, the line of history runs straight. Through discipline, through unity, through vision. The Tokugawa shogunate was not just a regime, it was a transformation of an entire civilization. It taught that peace is not weakness, that order can be as mighty as war, and that patience above all is the weapon of kings. 400 years later, Japan still carries the heartbeat of that vision. Its people move with precision. Its culture thrives in balance. Its spirit, calm, powerful, enduring, is the living proof of one man's dream. Tokugawa Ieyasu, the shogun who tamed chaos, built peace from war, and left behind not just an empire, but a philosophy that shaped a nation. His rise was not just a story of conquest. It was the story of control, endurance, and destiny. The story of a man who turned the tide of history, and in doing so, gave birth to modern Japan. His rule may have ended, but his spirit, the spirit of the shogun, will live forever. Time moves like the tide, slow, silent, unstoppable. Even the greatest empires, the mightiest rulers, must one day bow before its current. The Tokugawa shogunate was no exception. For more than 250 years, Japan stood firm under the Tokugawa rule. The samurai code defined the soul of the nation. The fields yielded peace instead of war. And Edo grew into one of the largest cities on earth. The system that Tokugawa Ieyasu built had endured, disciplined, orderly, and seemingly eternal. But beneath that calm surface, cracks had begun to form. The world outside was changing faster than anyone could imagine. Empires were rising, machines were replacing men. The guns that Tokugawa had once controlled now ruled continents. And Japan, sealed away from the rest of the world, began to fall behind. It was the mid-1800s. The Western powers, Britain, France, America, had carved the map of Asia with fire and iron. One by one, nations fell to colonization. And though Japan had long stood apart, it was only a matter of time before the storm reached its shores. That moment came in 1853, the day the Black Ships appeared. 4 American warships under Commodore Matthew Perry entered Edo Bay, their decks bristling with cannons, their hulls towering like mountains of smoke and steel. The message was simple: open your ports, or we will open them for you. The shogunate was stunned. Its swords and arrows were useless against iron and gunpowder. The shogun's court trembled between pride and fear, torn between the ancient code of isolation and the new world knocking at their gates. The once unshakable order of Tokugawa Japan began to crumble. The daimyo were divided. Some demanded to fight, others called for peace. The samurai, long without war, now faced a battle they could not understand. The people, confused and restless, began to question the old ways. And amid the confusion, a whisper began to rise, a call to restore the emperor, to end the shogunate, to begin again. The Tokugawa family, weakened by politics and age, struggled to hold the nation together. The old order could not withstand the new age. In 1868, the inevitable came. The last shogun, Tokugawa Yoshinobu, stood before the imperial court and did what no ruler had done before him. He surrendered his power peacefully. No war, no rebellion, no rivers of blood. He handed back authority to the emperor. The shogunate, the great system that had ruled Japan for over 2.5 centuries, was over. When a powerful Arab CEO's luxury car breaks down in the middle of a dusty Texas highway, he expects a quick fix, not a twist of fate. But when a 20-year-old small-town mechanic arrives to help, sparks fly in the most unexpected way. What begins as an engine problem soon turns into something deeper, a connection that neither of them saw coming. In the heart of Texas, under the burning sun, one man will discover that sometimes destiny wears grease-stained hands and a fearless smile. The Texas sun was blazing like fire, pouring its heat down on the endless road stretching through the countryside. Karim Al-Mansour, a 32-year-old CEO from Dubai, gripped the steering wheel of his black Aston Martin, his jaw tight with frustration. The car had been running perfectly until a few moments ago, when the engine began to sputter. The dashboard lights flickered, and before he could react, the vehicle coughed and died, rolling to a silent stop on the side of the highway. He sighed heavily, stepping out into the scorching air that burned against his skin. His crisp white shirt clung to his back as the hot wind swept across the barren land. The sound of insects buzzed in the distance, and heat shimmered off the asphalt like a mirage. Karim loosened his tie and glanced around, realizing he hadn't seen another car in almost 20 minutes. He was stranded, alone, under the unforgiving Texas sun. He pulled out his phone, checking for signal. One bar just enough to search for help. He found a local garage 10 miles away and called the number, hoping someone would answer quickly. After a few rings, a cheerful voice came through. "Yeah, this is Emily's Auto Repair. What can I do for you?" Karim explained his situation briefly, trying not to sound irritated. The voice on the other end chuckled lightly. "Fancy car, huh? Don't worry, I'll come get you." Before he could ask for details, she hung up. Kareem frowned slightly, but was relieved someone was on the way. He leaned against the car, squinting toward the horizon, waiting for the rescue to arrive in the heat of the afternoon. Almost an hour later, the distant rumble of an engine reached his ears. A rusty tow truck appeared over the hill, kicking up clouds of dust as it approached. Kareem watched in disbelief as the truck rolled to a stop beside him, and the driver's door creaked open. Out jumped a young woman, barely 20, wearing a pair of faded jeans, a sleeveless work shirt, and a baseball cap turned backward. Her hands were smudged with grease, and her eyes sparkled with confidence. She looked nothing like the kind of mechanic he had expected. "You the guy with the fancy car that couldn't handle Texas?" she asked, grinning as she shut the door behind her. Kareem blinked, caught off guard by her casual tone. "Yes," he replied stiffly. "I'm the one who called." She smirked. "Well, I'm Emily. Let's see what this rich man's toy is crying about." Her teasing tone made him raise an eyebrow. But there was something disarming about her energy, unfiltered, fearless, and almost magnetic. She walked straight to the hood and popped it open like she'd done it 1,000 times before. Kareem stood beside her, unsure of what to say. He wasn't used to people talking to him so directly. Back home, everyone treated him with polished respect. Mr. Al-Mansour this and Sir that. But Emily didn't seem to care who he was. Her focus was on the car, her movements quick and sure. "You drive this beauty a lot?" she asked, glancing at him briefly. "Sometimes," he replied. "Mostly for meetings and events," she laughed softly. "Figures. These cars like to be driven, not pampered. Maybe she's just mad you treat her like a trophy?" Her light-hearted comment made him smile, despite himself. "Do you talk to every car like this?" he asked. Emily grinned, tightening a bolt. "Only the ones worth saving." For the next 20 minutes, she worked under the hood, checking the oil, the coolant, and the wiring. Kareem watched her carefully, fascinated by how confidently she handled everything. Her hands were steady, her focus absolute, yet her demeanor stayed playful. "You could help, you know," she said suddenly, tossing him a wrench. He froze, catching it clumsily. "I run a company worth billions," he said dryly. "I'm not sure I'm qualified for manual labor." Emily burst into laughter, shaking her head. "Well, Mr. Billion-Dollar CEO, today you're my assistant." She guided him through small tasks, holding the flashlight, passing tools, wiping the hood, all while teasing him for how awkward he looked. But as the minutes passed, Kareem began to relax. Her laughter was contagious, her energy warm and genuine. There was no pretense, no expectation, just two people under the hot Texas sky, fixing a broken car. By the time the sun started to dip lower, the tension had melted away, replaced by a strange sense of comfort. Finally, Emily wiped her hands and closed the hood with a satisfied click. "Try it now," she said confidently. Kareem got behind the wheel and turned the key. The engine roared back to life, smooth and steady. He looked up at her through the windshield, surprised and impressed. Stepping out of the car, he said sincerely, "You're incredible." "How did you?" She interrupted with a shrug. "Experience. My dad taught me before I could even drive." Her voice softened slightly. "He passed a few years ago. Now it's just me in the shop." There was a quiet pause between them. Kareem nodded respectfully. "He must have been proud of you." She smiled faintly. "Yeah, I like to think so." The golden sunset painted her face in warm light, and for a moment Kareem couldn't look away. Something about her felt different, real, grounded, full of life. She broke the silence with a grin. "So what do I charge a billionaire for roadside service? 10 grand sound fare?" He chuckled for the first time that day. "How about dinner instead?" She tilted her head playfully. I don't usually eat with clients. But since you're offering, I might make an exception." Kareem laughed softly, surprised by how easily the words came out. "Deal," he said. She smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "All right, city boy. There's a diner a few miles down. Follow me, and try not to stall this time." She climbed into her tow truck, and he followed in his Aston Martin, the engine purring like new. As they drove into the glowing sunset, Kareem couldn't shake the feeling that something unusual had just begun. Something that had nothing to do with cars or engines. When they reached the small-town diner, Emily parked the truck and hopped out. "Welcome to Texas hospitality," she said, gesturing toward the neon-lit sign that read Sonny's Diner. Kareem smiled faintly, stepping out of his car. For the first time in a long while, he felt normal. No meetings, no boardrooms, no polished business suits, just a man and a woman who met by chance. As they walked toward the diner door, Kareem realized that the strangest thing about that day wasn't his car breaking down. It was that somehow it had led him exactly where he needed to be. The diner smelled of coffee, butter, and fresh pie. Neon lights flickered softly through the windows as the two stepped inside. Kareem felt out of place among the checkered floors and country music, but Emily walked in like she owned the place. She waved to the waitress behind the counter, then slid into a booth by the window. "Best burgers in town," she said proudly. Kareem took a seat across from her, amused by how different she was from anyone he'd ever met. There was no pretense, no effort to impress, just authenticity that made her glow. Emily glanced at the menu briefly before setting it aside. "So what brings a big-shot CEO like you to the middle of nowhere?" she asked. Kareem smiled faintly. "Business meetings. I'm expanding my company into the US market." She leaned forward, resting her chin on her hand. "And how's that going for you?" He shrugged. "Profitable but exhausting." She nodded knowingly. "Money's great, but it doesn't fill the quiet parts of your day, does it?" Her words hit harder than he expected. For a moment he couldn't find a clever reply. The waitress came by, took their order, and left them with tall glasses of sweet tea. Emily twirled her straw, studying him curiously. "You don't look like a guy who smiles often," she said. "That obvious?" he asked with a small smirk. "Very," she replied. "You carry yourself like someone always chasing something." He stared at the table for a moment. "Maybe I am." She didn't push further, and he appreciated that. It felt strange, this calm honesty between two strangers who'd only met hours ago, yet somehow she understood things about him that others never could. Their food arrived, and conversation flowed easily. Kareem talked about Dubai, about skyscrapers and boardrooms, and Emily shared stories about growing up in Texas, fixing engines, riding horses, watching thunderstorms roll across the plains. Every time she laughed, the sound filled the space like a song. Kareem found himself laughing too, something he hadn't done in weeks. By the time they finished eating, he realized he'd completely forgotten about time. "It's getting late," Emily said softly, glancing outside. The streets were quiet, and the stars above the diner shimmered like silver dust. When they stepped outside, the warm night air wrapped around them. The small town was peaceful, a few crickets chirping, the distant hum of a passing truck. Emily leaned against her tow truck, her hands in her pockets. "So, did I earn my dinner?" she teased. Kareem smiled. "You earned more than that." "You saved my day." She looked at him for a long moment, her expression softer now. "You know, most people who break down out here just complain or yell. You're different," he chuckled. "That's one way to put it," she grinned. "I mean it. You listened, Kareem."